The First Strike event is rearing its head. The highest prestige tournament that Valorant has ever seen thus far. Fully backed by Riot, this event is going to be the benchmark of how the wider competitive scene is measured for the next few months. But who should you root for? With so many players and teams entering the First Strike event across multiple regions, it can be daunting to jump into Valorant esports. Or sit back and relax as I regale the tale of Team Liquid and why you should root for them. Our story begins where all good stories should, at the beginning. And for this story of Team Liquid, you need to know the wider context of this team's history. You see, the core of Liquid is made up of players hailing from the United Kingdom. And whilst this might not seem relevant, you'll know the significance of this if you've ever followed the UK CS scene. You see, Team Liquid did not start out as Team Liquid. They were originally known as Fish123, a famous UK mixed team that Cryptix and Sliggy, now coach, were part of for many, many years. And it was from this foundation that formed the team you know today. It hasn't been all sunshine and rainbows for UK esports though. As a matter of fact, the UK CS scene was, and still is to a certain extent, catastrophically disheartening to any would-be competitors. The scene over the course of its lifetime has been rife with toxicity, match fixing, and cheating. For a player to break out into the Tier 1 scene, it would require an immense amount of luck and hard work. With so many obstacles in the scene itself, any new talent looking for a path would struggle. So when the Valorant beta kicked off, an opportunity presented itself. Did they stay and fester in the UK scene without any upward goals in sight? Or did they take their talents to a new pasture, ripe for the taking? For Sliggy, the answer was simple. He would take his game knowledge from his many years of playing and observing and instead attempt to form something that had never been done before. A UK team without the baggage. Separate from the drama of a bygone era, Valorant had presented a new stage for them to shine. And so Fish123 was formed once more. Alongside Cryptix, Eccles, Soulcast, Artis and Link, this was a UK Titan team in the flesh. With unprecedented team chemistry and mechanical skill, they dominated the early EU Valorant scene, winning tournament after tournament after tournament. But it wasn't just the wins that made this impressive. If you watch their games, they played a style that was so unlike any other team. They were loose, they were fast, and aggressive. The tempo they played the game at crushed anyone who couldn't keep up, and the agents they worked with were even stranger. You see, at the time, the meta was largely set in stone. The North American teams had largely decided on the best comp. Brimstone for the smokes, Cypher for the information, Sage for the areas and island healing, Breach for the flashes and execute possibilities, and a flex pick, normally Sova, for some extra information gathering. But where most teams saw a concrete locked-in metagame, Fish123 saw supple clay straight from the rivers of Bangladesh. Sliggy and the gang continued the long British tradition of ignoring the USA and formed a composition bespoke to them, playing Jet and Raze when nobody else really was. Artis was fully unlocking the potential of the upping Jet playstyle, and Soulcast was working magic on the map, getting maximum value out of Raze. Fish123 just seemed to create advantages out of thin air. The mechanics and team play were unmatched in EU. But all good things must come to an end. On June 14th of 2020, Artis had received a better offer. Despite winning every major tournament at the time, it wasn't enough to attract the eye of any organization. And so Fish123 began to be picked apart, with Artis being poached over to G2. Disaster had struck. One of the core cogs of the Fish123 machine was gone. Without someone to replace Artis, one of the best oppers and riflers in the world, it would seem that the days of Fish123 were over once again. It seems that not even in Valorant could the UK scene escape the problems of its past. So many teams have faced this dilemma. Losing a core part of the roster is often a death blow. Many teams are unable to recover, and they often split up and go their separate ways. But for Fish123, that was just not an option. Instead of staying stuck in their ways, they began to experiment. The play style that had netted them so much success was scrapped, and they brought in possibly the only man who could replace a talent like Artis. Enter Scream. One of the GOAT Counter-Strike players with a long and storied history, Scream had been dabbling in Valorant from the beta, playing on a variety of mixed teams with great success. He had conquered the CS scene back in the day, boasting one of the best headshot ratios in the history of any CS game. A reputation that was so far-reaching that it spawned one of the most iconic Counter-Strike advertisements ever.
They talk about my one-taps, and I think for me, aiming is so easy.
With Scream surrounded by 4 British men, this team was suddenly relevant once more. They'd been given a lifeline, an opportunity to pick up the clay pieces and reforge them into something much more. And so they worked, grinding a tournament here and a tournament there, but never really recapturing the success that they had had earlier in the year. But the real catalyst for change happened with their signing. See, Team Liquid had now entered the scene. Signing these boys and giving them the support of an organization seemed to be exactly what they were missing. Finally signed, a team could play with a weight off their shoulders. People underestimate the support one can receive from an organization. When signed, you no longer have to worry as much about paying the bills. It provides a consistent income. Your sole focus is on the game and the game alone. All the pieces had been gathered, but the question still remained. How could this team maximize their roster? They still had no dedicated primary operator player, and they would have to experiment once more. Now, if you told me that Sliggy decided what compositions they played based on a blind game of darts and the current atmospheric pressure in Botswana, I would say stop overreacting, because whilst it is unconventional, the compositions were not out of the ordinary. You see, Liquid had found a foundation of which to build their new playstyle upon. Raze allowed Soulcast to play his preferred agent, and the aggressive tempo that Liquid preferred to play at is enabled by her kit, clearing angles quickly with utility, but slowly and methodically gaining map control. For Scream, Reyna not only empowers him to pop off rifling, but also the Leer allows him to make set plays with another player at any moment. This playstyle of creating lots of set 2-man executes was the bread and butter of Team Liquid because of how much flexibility and agency it allows in the moment. With all this being said, the best finishes Team Liquid have achieved are only 3rd place. But this is about to change. If early Fish 123 was like a bobcat stalking and pouncing on its prey with great energy, this Team Liquid is like a hibernating bear. Now, if you're not on the Team Liquid hype train at this point, then I've got one extra thing that might sway you. Plat 1.09 has caused turmoil in the wider scene. The operator has finally been stunted after a series of nasty nerfs, and some teams are taking it better than others. For Team Liquid though, they aren't sweating. For the past few months they've been honing a playstyle that's a pleasure to watch. Comfortable riflers from top to bottom and set plays to boot, they are primed and ready to take a top spot in the upcoming First Strike event. Whilst other teams were studying the operator and becoming overly reliant, Team Liquid were never dependent on it in the first place. With open qualifiers in EU beginning November 9th, Team Liquid are looking like the early favourites. The meta is there for the taking, and we haven't even seen this team running at maximum efficiency yet. Now, if you are still undecided on what team to root for, I hope this has at least helped you make up your mind now. That way, when Team Liquid win the First Strike tournament, you can be that weird guy on Reddit who constantly calls out the predictions that he made back in 2018, 2017, whatever year it was, saying stuff like, "Imagine doubting the tactical genius of Sliggy." Ah. You know the type. I hope you enjoyed this First Strike Team Liquid preview. It was a bit of experimental content from me and from us at the Plat Chat and Valorant crew. We're still going to be pumping out a lot of these First Strike previews in a more traditional manner, but I decided to try something different, and if it's well received, then who knows, you know, you could see some more of these on your timeline shortly. But thank you for watching. If you made it to this point, make sure you like and leave a comment to tell us what you liked, what team you want to see covered next, and we'll see you guys very soon.